Hi everyone, it's Dr. Page here. Welcome to Intro to Research Methods, and I will be your instructor of record. My name is Dr. Gage. I've already said that, and you've read the syllabus, so you know. This course is going to be 100% online. Just log in each week, check your folder, do your work, and you should be fine. I will have a few virtual class meetings to help you guys out with that research project. If you're feeling like overwhelmed with that it's online, don't worry, we're going to be fine. We're going to get through this. If you haven't done so already, pick up this book, Social Research Methods by Example. I selected this book because it aligns with how I like to teach this course. It's a husband and wife team, so I love it. But most importantly, it gives you real world examples of how researchers think, how social scientists think, and how they work. Because that's ultimately the aim of this course is I want you to start thinking like a social scientist and be exposed to this world. So basically how it would feel 24/7 if you were in grad school. When I went to grad school, I just got dropped into this research environment. I did research every single day, 24/7. So, the one tip that I can give you about being a successful researcher is pick a topic that you love because you are married to your topic. You are living, thinking, breathing your topic. So, with the research project that we have coming up, pick a topic that you love. It'll be so much more funner and just great if you do that. So let's dig in. Okay. Chapter 1, Introduction to Research Methods. It starts out by telling you a story about why our environment matters. And that's directly in line with my research background because that's some of the things that I study. I look at country characteristics and how your country can influence your health. So how, and I compare that to different countries. So in one country, if you live there, your health might be better than if you live in another country. And it could be because of the environment that you're living in. If you live in a highly polluted place versus a less polluted place, a high crime area versus a less, versus a lower crime area, a place where everybody rides their bikes everywhere they go versus that everybody jumps in the cars. You're going to see differences in obesity levels. So your environment does matter. And what researchers do, how we work, is we think through variables. We turn everything in to a variable. Our participants, their characteristics are all condensed down into a variable. So a person is very multifaceted, but a researcher is looking at their marital status, their age, their gender, and these types of examples are the independent variables. And your dependent variable is your outcome. So let's take a moment and go to the slides. I'm going to share my screen here for a moment. I've prepared a couple of slides for today's lecture, which is titled Think Like a Social Scientist. And I like this cartoon because it says, I'm a social scientist, Michael. That means I can't explain electricity or anything like that, but if you ever want to know about people, I'm your man. And that is a social scientist in a nutshell. We can explain, depending upon what your specialization is, we can tell you why people do what they do, why they act like they act, and why they make the choices that they choose, and then also the environmental factors that have an influence on that. So we are always needing a dependent variable when we start our work. And so if you're a health researcher, your dependent variable, your outcome variable, so what you are looking for, your outcome, it would be health. But it could be any types of health. It could be looking at, if you're looking at obesity, it's obesity. If you're interested in smoking, it could be smoking outcomes. If you're looking at cancer, for example, it could be different types of cancer, it could be COVID. So health in general. And a lot of times in the surveys, what you see, because surveys need to be standardized across, different populations, you see the question, how would you rate your health today? And then they put it on a scale from, for example, 1 to 5, with 1 being poor and 5 being really good. And then we use that dependent variable to examine health in different populations. Based on that question, how would you rate your health today? And that variable from that question, research has shown, is very predictive of a person's mortality rate. And what they also show is that women tend to say their health is poorer as compared to men, but women live longer in general than men. So there's that weird gender sex phenomena that's also a part of that question. And then we always have independent variables in our data set that we look to pick from, and we're looking at how these independent variables are associated with the dependent variables. So how age, sex, marital status, education level, occupation, status, how that influences your health, for example. That's in essence what a researcher who's studying, for example, health is doing. So they're looking how your outcome, how your independent variables influence the outcome. So if I was in the classroom right now and I had a whiteboard, I would draw you a DAG, a diagram called a DAG, a dialectic graph that shows you an arrow of your independent variable going towards your dependent variable, because you're looking at how your independent variable is influencing that dependent variable. I don't have that possibility right here. I know I do, but I just don't know how to use it. Let me see. Okay. Now, something else that we're interested in knowing, what you want to be careful with when you're building your model. So when you're making your research project, you're building your model as a researcher, is you're interested in confounding. So, in confounding factors, and those are your unknown factors. When you have confounding in your analysis, those are other independent variables that you just might not have accounted for when you're doing your analysis. That's what that is. So, you want to account for that as a researcher as best you can to make sure, but you can never really guarantee it. But you're interested in trying to eliminate unknown factors, but it's never a guarantee. But you do your best because you're a good researcher. So moving on along in chapter 1, causality. It's a very big theme in research because correlation does not mean causation. And a lot of times people see something that's correlated and they think, well, because there's a strong correlation, then this X caused Y. And we cannot necessarily say X caused Y because you don't know. You don't know if X caused Y. So don't make that mistake. It's a common mistake to assume that the independent and dependent variables has a cause and effect relationship. Don't do that. But oftentimes we do. But you guys have learned that you're not going to do that. And in this discussion for this week, there is a picture. You should look at that picture. Let me know the answer. And I can tell you the answer is already correlation does not mean causation, because that's what I want you to really bring home from this entire talk about causality. Something else that researchers do is we have our variables, and then there's different types of there's different types of variables, there's different types of levels of measurement, and that you probably learned in your basic math class. So I want you to look at these different types, know the difference, be able to identify what the different types are. So how we start, they have a nice little table here on page 18. And how a social scientist starts is we come up with a research question, something that we really want to know. And then after that, we figure out, what we hypothesize, it's going to be. We look at the hypothesis, and we try to develop variables that we can use in our research question. And we do that by, if you're an epidemiologist like me, then your data set's already collected, so you're quite fixed because you're using someone else's data. You're doing an observational study because you're looking at data that's already collected for you. But if you are designing your own study, then in your questionnaire, those questions that you make and develop will become your variables. So choose wisely because you can only have so many. And then after that, you think about the theory involved with it. And then you go and you work on operationalization. We do operationalize everything in social science. So it's very important for us, as you will see in the next chapter, um, because we can't always define our construct that we're measuring. Um, so we have to operationalize it. So I'll get to that in a minute. So then once you do all of that, you think about what kind of method you're going to use to examine um, your research question. You think about the participants you're going to go for. You do your literature review, so you find out what's already been done on your topic, you learn about it, and then you go collect your data. Then you do your data analysis, so you put the data that you've collected from your surveys into the statistical program. A lot of people use SPSS. I use Stata. Others use R and SAS are big ones. Know those. So that's Stata, SAS, R, SPSS. Those are big statistical programs. They're the main ones that we use. And then you're going to do your data analysis in these programs, and you come up with your data, and you're going to report and write on it. And you make your report and you submit that for publication. And that's, in essence, how the research process works. And a lot of students ask me, do you have to pay for publication? And most times not, only if it's like open access, but generally you don't have to pay for publication. You submit to a journal, it's free, it goes through a review process, you get corrections back, and you have to redo whatever they ask, and then you resubmit, and hopefully you get published. If you don't, you get a rejection. That's how that works. And you pick yourself up and you try again. So, moving on to chapter 2. In chapter 2, they introduced the general social survey. So that's like a big social science survey that's used in America. There are many other surveys, like large surveys. World Health Survey is another one. The ESS, which is the European Social Survey, is another one, which is the counterpart to the American General Social Survey. It talks about operationalization, so making a construct measurable. So, for example, if you're going to study, in the book they give the example of racism, but you can use this with any kind of concept. So, sexism as well. Any type of construct that is just like, out there, like how do you measure it, And so that's what operationalization does. So then you're going to figure out a way how to shape your questions to measure it. So in my example with health, a person's health was measured. I mean, because it's such a, with health, if unless you're asking a medical doctor, then it's a construct. So you're asking the person what their how they experience their health today. So your operationalization, you're putting it on a number scale, and then you're able to measure, well, this and this is what means health in this study. So when you do that, you want to make sure that the measurement is valid and reliable. And the rest of this chapter talks about validity and reliability. And I want you to look at that and read that. I think that's something that you can just read on your own without me regurgitating it, and knowing that it's important. One tip I would say is take a look at your study and review section, because the exam will be reflected on that. Know your different concepts, the different concepts highlighted in bold in the textbook, and not just being able to regurgitate the definition, but how would a social scientist use it? So how would a social scientist use operationalization? What would they be doing? How does a social scientist think about causality? That's how I want you to take. That's what I want you to take away when reading this book. So not just being able to regurgitate a definition, but really thinking, how would a social scientist do it? What are the steps social scientists take when they do their research? Because the main objective of chapter 1 and 2 is to teach you how to think like a social scientist. That's the objective of this entire course, but that's really the nitty-gritty of 1 and 2. It's giving you the fundamentals of that. So my take-home message is, when you're studying for this exam that's coming up, don't just try to regurgitate the terms, but use the terms. Figure out how to distinguish between the terms if an example was given, a real world example was given it to you. So I hope that you understood what I am saying. And it might be handy that when you're listening to this lecture, I guess I should have said that in the beginning, but I will go through and I'll write it, is to have the book with you while I'm doing the lecture, and then you can look in it as I'm going. Maybe that will be a handy tip for you in how to navigate these lectures, since we're not face to face in class and you can't just stop me. And I know that I'm putting a lot of content and information in this one video, but I'm doing that because it's not a live class. So normally in a live class, we would have a lot of time to discuss these concepts. I don't want to bore you and have a super long video that's the length of the class time. I think you can more effectively use your time by having the book with you, reading the book, reading the content, and then using the book at the same time that I'm doing this short, quick lecture for you that hits on the top bullet points. So I hope these handy tips have helped you, and good luck. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.